G'day mud fanciers, my name's Annabel Crabb and I'm here at Mud Australia Global Headquarters in Marrickville, New South Wales, just under the flight path, which is less of an issue than it used to be, and welcoming you to this inaugural Mud Talks event. Now, more centrally, we are here on Gadigal land, on the lands of the Eora Nation, a sacred piece of land on which for many millennia people have made things with their hands and gathered to talk and be creative together, and that's what we're doing tonight. And we acknowledge the elders and owners of this land, past and present. And I know that tonight we're all coming in from different parts of Australia, so just take a second to reflect on what's been made of the piece of land that you're sitting on tonight, talking to us about Mud Australia. Like I said, I'm here in the Mud Australia factory. It is exactly the Willy Wonka charm bomb that you would expect it to be. I've had the tour and I know that you're all primed to hear from Mud Australia founder Shelley Simpson tonight. I know that you're all settled with your Voyager Estate wine and you're feasting if you're in Melbourne from the awesome Free to Feed organisation creating employment pathways for refugees to Australia. And if you're in Sydney, you're eating food provided by the terrific Too Good organisation, who run a one-for-one meal scheme looking after women who are survivors of domestic violence, to incredible organisations doing great works in our respective parts of this continent. Now, I'm not going to hog your attention any longer because on the other side of this brilliantly conceived, emerging from the kiln array of mud porcelain is the woman herself behind this iconic brand, Shelley Simpson. Shelley, welcome to your own place.
Thanks, Annabel.
Look, I'm a local, I live around the corner, and I'm a mud fan, as so many people tuning in tonight are. I know that you've been in business for 25 years now. You're a huge part of this community, and you're recognisable substantially outside it and internationally. I wanted to start by asking you about how you came to build this empire. I mean, what were you doing when you decided to turn your hand to ceramics?
I'd moved to Sydney from Melbourne. I grew up in Melbourne. My life was very much about creative pursuits. I loved music, I loved acting, wasn't particularly good at either. I was kind of middling in both, and moved to Sydney and moved into a house with an actor who had a pottery wheel in her back shed. And I was working for managing a restaurant, as a lot of actors end up in that sort of space, and started playing with clay and just fell in love with it. I didn't, time passed, it was a beautiful meditation. I felt that I could do things without too much effort. It was all about centering myself, and working on a wheel is very much about that. So it was an easy beginning for me. Yeah, but very much a hobby.
So principally a tactile sort of activity.
Yeah, I mean, Sydney lends itself, like in summer, you can imagine it's a hot summer's day and there's water and clay. It's not quite ghosts, but it's, it's got that, I don't know, I lived in Rose Bay, and it was just a beautiful beginning of something new for me.
So what sort of things were you pumping out at this point? I mean, I'd like to think that you've turned out some lumpy, dreadful stuff at the beginning. I mean,
I've actually, up in my office, I've got the first pot I ever made. It sits up on there just to remind me. And on the bottom I wrote, my very first pot. So that was over 25 years ago. But yeah, a lot of failures. I mean, really, my process, I didn't go to art school, so I didn't have that process. I didn't have the masters teaching me how to do it. But I definitely had a lot of failures. A lot of things went into the trash or into the second sale,
right.
Where, thank God for the second sale. Just gradually, with a lot of assistance from a lot of people over the years, learnt my craft.
Okay, so you don't use a wheel anymore, right?
No.
And one of the really iconic things about what you make is that it's not a very customary way of dealing with clay, is it? Can you just give, I mean, I think a few people with us tonight will kind of know how mud ceramics are made, but can you give us a quick idiot's course like the one you gave me when we were going around the factory just a second ago?
So we generally work with a single profile, so it's an outside, which keeps things uniform enough so that you can get a stack of plates. And we have a liquid clay that we tint when it's liquid. We pour that into the piece. There's many variables that will affect that, but essentially we leave it for a period of time, tip the clay out, and what is left inside is what we're working with.
So it's like a little skin.
It's like a little skin. It's like that custard off, the top of the custard or something.
So you're making clotted cream in a kind of pottery form, right? Okay.
The porcelain, the plaster sucks the moisture into it, and slowly it dries, and then you put it onto a small banding wheel.
Don't you love that the only plane flying over the entire continent ever is just like, this is where we live, Marrickville.
Do you think it's the UPS plane?
The pause, I don't know.
It's
maybe
usually the
right.
Yeah.
Do you think it's carrying, US postal votes to be buried in the Nullarbor or something? No, that's not happening. It's really not happening.
Then we take it, we put it onto what's known as a banding wheel, and we spin it. So it's still doing the handmade bit. We're taking any excess away and flattening as much as we can the surface, and then it sits for 24 hours. We take it out of the mould, goes to another team who trim the edges and glaze the pieces, and it goes into the kiln, just like that. Not quite like that, but nearly like that. And then it comes out, and then we quality control it. Some pieces will go into seconds, some pieces will go into our new area where we're looking at our terrazzo, mud terrazzo.
Stop it.
You've just heard it, first time.
Mud terrazzo. I am very here for mud terrazzo.
And we ship it all over the world. So
now, I don't want to be judgmental or prescriptive about people who work with clay, but some of them are quite didactic, right, about like the methods that you use. And your method is a bit unorthodox.
It's a bit unorthodox, but it's what I worked out how to do. I mean, it's not, I think a bunch of the guys that went to art school that work with mud now can be a little horrified with some of the processes, but it works for us.
Do you have a sort of fast and loose reputation in the ceramic community?
Probably. They probably don't think I know what I'm doing.
Is it like you're dancing your own steps?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think people like it very much.
Right. So was that much of a? I mean, if you're busting into a field in which many people have centuries of expertise, it's a bit ballsy to kind of think, well, I'm going to make it this way. Was that hard for you as a young woman?
I think I just focused on doing what I needed to do. I didn't really think about what other people thought too much about what I was doing. Occasionally something would jump in front of me and I'd think, oh, that's uncalled for or not very nice. Right. But I just, didn't really matter. At that time, I probably had 2 small children,
right.
Running around and trying to run a business and doing lots of things. So there wasn't really time to care too much about what other people thought about what I was doing. And there were enough people loving what I was doing and buying what I was doing, so it didn't really matter.
So you had a kind of a market stand for a while, first of all, right?
Yeah, started at Bondi Markets. And lived around the corner from there, so it was all about convenience. So go down to the school, rain, hail or shine, and sit there, and I would hand paint things. At that point, mud didn't look like mud looks now. It was lemons and highly decorated sort of items. Right. Then stepped away from the market, started doing trade shows, and so started becoming a wholesaler, and that was basically a good chunk of time at the beginning. I learnt my craft then. I went from working with an earthenware clay to a porcelain clay, and that was, I think, an essential evolution of the brand,
So you say that that early stuff that you made wouldn't be recognisable as mud today, but one of the things that I find really interesting about your brand. And I would say that I moved into this area about 10 years ago. I moved back from London and I saw mud around and I was absolutely captivated by the colours and by the simplicity and the beauty of the shapes. And the interesting thing to me is that that was 10 years ago, and you've developed a lot of new stuff since, but also there was a real through line. I mean, anything that I pick up now goes exactly with the stuff that I have that's 10 years old. So you don't have that sort of built-in obsolescence that a lot of brands have, like that stupid thing with Apple where, you know, there's always a different charger. Like, I hate that,
crazy.
right? Like,
Drives me crazy.
so it's a business model that's built on obliging your customer consistently to replace and refresh. But that's not the way that you work. Was that planned?
I don't think it was the idea at the beginning. I think at the beginning I was sort of, you know, at the beginning it's the beginning, so there's lots of room to move. You start and you're like, it's all the things I wanted to have in my own home. So that's kind of one of my design principles. Do I need this? Do I want this in my house? And definitely I would, I could do with that and I could do with this shape. And I mean, I didn't ever have the whole collection in my house, but over time I've used different things. Definitely, I can't remember what the question was. I feel like I'm deviating.
Built-in obsolescence?
Built-in obsolescence. No, because I think, you know, good design has to sustain time, and people are buying collections, so they're investing, you know, a substantial amount of money to get a mud dinner set, or over time, little pieces, bits at a time, to create their own collection, and they want to be able to add to it. Occasionally, we'll lose a colour.
Is that
Safari.
a big deal?
Safari is a big deal. People will be inhaling at the moment, if anybody has Safari. It was such a trauma when it went, and we just couldn't get it back.
I don't think I have Safari. Can you just quickly tell me why don't we have Safari?
It's not dissimilar to this beautiful coat I'm wearing.
Okay. I'm more of a wasabi lady, so I wouldn't be blending that with
it's
Safari.
definitely a dark. We shouldn't.
So it's like Prince Harry dress-up sort of tone.
Yeah.
And why did you make it dye?
Well, I didn't make it dye.
Right.
It just disappeared. Because what we were doing was not the standard way of doing it, the people who supplied me with the different components made changes to those things, and we couldn't recreate what we'd created. Ceramics is not an exact science.
Is everybody okay? I'm a bit worried. I'm just a bit worried that there's going to be some Safari fans just like very triggered by what's just happened. So like, we should set up a helpline.
Yeah.
Guys, there isn't a helpline. Just paper bag, breathe into it. Back to you, sorry.
So it's not an exact science. We have like, I think it's somewhere between 20 and 30% what we call shrinkage, so things going wrong.
Yeah.
This week, we made ash, which is a standard mud colour, a lovely grey,
It's
very
lovely.
chic.
Yeah.
It came out the wrong colour, didn't it? I'm looking over there and they're all nodding.
I'll
Because there's a
totally
whole
take
lot
it.
of it sitting on a trolley in there. That is wrong. It's a beautiful colour. We don't know what to do with it.
I'm
often-
heading home. I'm very close by. I just, I feel...
Often we have these kind of things that we trip up. But, you know, essentially we work with what we have and we do a reasonable job at keeping it consistent. But that's really important. So somebody drops something, breaks something, they need another piece to put back in it. They need it to match. And we do our best to try and keep it consistent. And after I stopped dealing, I mean, we still sell at wholesale, and my wholesale accounts I've been with for a long time, and they're lovely people. But when we opened our own retail store, everything was flipped on its head.
Right.
Because at trade shows, what people are looking for is newness. It has to be new. It has to be a new shape, a new colour, a new something. Otherwise, they don't need to come to the trade show to see you.
Right.
But when you have a store, people don't want new so much. They want to know that they can come in and get a replacement or the thing that they've seen before.
How interesting, okay.
So everything really changed with opening retail. Plus we got direct feedback, which was the most wonderful thing. You know, people have asked me for things, you know, often I'll be sitting in store, and particularly in the early days, not so much now, They're all shaking their heads over. The retail team are here, just in case people are wondering who I'm looking at over there. But, you know, there are times that I spend in store and I'll be chatting with somebody and they ask me for a particular shape, and I think about it and I listen and I try and weave that into what I'm doing.
So in a weird sort of way, I mean, moving into direct retail, I guess, is a strange but scaled up version of what you were first doing at the market stall,
absolutely.
right? Just talking to people that you're making things for. And I imagine that there's a certain amount of faffing about involved in running a sort of two-phase business like that, where you're wholesaling but you're also direct retailing. What about the internet? I mean, has that changed the way that you operate?
Mm-hmm. Who would think that people would like to buy things on the internet?
I know.
Particularly ceramics. But I think people need to pick up and feel. Like, there's me sort of 10 years ago, and then there's me now, and I've been completely won over by all of the change. It's completely changed.
Well,
and
you were a bit of a kind of, it's never going to happen.
Never going to happen. Don't be ridiculous. That's not going to work. You know, people need to pick it up, because the mud's all about touching and feeling, and the way something sits in your hand is important. But it's not that important.
Wow. Okay. So was that a bit of a blinding reveal for you?
It was, and I think, you know, I think the thing that we've found, like, I really pride. My favourite thing is going into a mud store and the level of customer service that you get and how people look after people. Here's another plane.
This is Tony Abbott coming home, as I understand it.
All right,
yeah.
He's got his own plane.
I don't think so.
So, you know, creating a retail experience on the internet, I think that reflects mud and brings it together and makes you feel part of a community, is a really tricky thing. And I think that's the thing that we're experimenting since the COVID happened.
Yeah.
We're experimenting a lot and putting a lot of time and energy into that, because we realise, particularly people in Melbourne. Hello, people in Melbourne.
Hello, people in Melbourne.
Hi, family.
My
family's there.
Yeah, your family's there, and lots of people's families are there. And I mean, we are all thinking of how shocking a time that you're having of it at the moment. And if you do have a bit of mud to gain some comfort from,
have a sip of your wine.
Have a sip of your wine. If you're wondering, if you've glimpsed me looking at my phone, it's not because I'm bored or I'm flicking through something or other. It's because I'm set up to receive your questions if you'd like to post any through. And as long as they're clean and reasonable, I'll forward them when we get the opportunity in about 15 minutes' time to take some questions. I'd also like to thank you for your patience if you've had any kind of connectivity issues. This is a first-time attempt, so everybody's learning on the job, and as has been evidenced by this company, great things can come from small beginnings. So back to the chat. One of the things that I wonder about you is that you kind of set up this quite local company. You're obviously very community-based. You're not, as far as I can tell, unless you've got some diabolical side agenda, you don't seem to be hugely motivated by mega profit. You know, there's not a huge margin in what you do, right? So how did you decide that would be your approach, A, and B, how does it adapt to a changing business environment?
I mean, I think that spending as much time as you do at work meant that, for me, work had to be a pleasurable experience. And I was spending a lot of time with a group of people, and I wanted it to be a pleasant experience for them as well. And I find a lot of what happens outside of the walls of mud really difficult and quite disturbing. And, you know, I have times where I can't watch the news because it's, you know, I'm a sensitive soul, and I get overwhelmed with what can I do to make this better. And so I've really looked inward over the last couple of years to try and improve the workspaces, the connectivity, the community, and that isn't a particularly profitable thing. It's not important. It's not as important as having a good experience along the way and making sure that the people that are working at mud are doing the same, having the same experience, and that the people who are coming into the stores are having that same experience. You know, I've made some great friends through my wholesale accounts, for example, and they're, you know, it's a pleasure to do that. I mean, really, when we made a decision to open our third store, we were looking at options like Chatswood. And my husband just said, I don't want to get stuck on the bridge.
Right.
And I said, well, where do you want to open? And he foolishly said, New York. And I went, great, let's do that. So then the third store...
That's not complicated in a transport
not
sense
at all.
No,
No, well, we kind of went, well, we've opened Fitzroy as the second store, and that was my old stomping ground from when I lived in Melbourne, and I loved that whole area. And so why not open a store in New York?
Why not?
It's really hard to open a store in New York if you have no idea what you're doing, which we did, but we got there and it was such a pleasure. Like I love going there and I miss being there. I miss the team over there. They're working really hard and really isolated. So I'm sure they'll get to watch this at some point. Thank you guys, you work very hard. Yeah, so again, I've lost my train of thought.
No, you haven't.
No?
You've really nailed that answer. You'll be surprised to hear. But look, I wanted to ask you, you know, mud is not a cheap product, right? Like it's super recognisable, it's very hardy, and people build, you know, collections over time. What's it like to deal with, you know, the competition from like mass market cheap alternatives? Like there's a huge pressure, I imagine, and I know that the materials that you use aren't cheap.
No. So we kind of try, I guess I've watched people try to compete with a cheaper price point product, and we really didn't put ourselves into the arena. We just separated ourselves and said, this is what we do. It may not be to everybody's taste. The people who love this will find a way to create a collection. So we don't insist that you buy a dinner set of 12. And if you buy a dinner set of 12, you get a discount. So of this lovely story, I had a guy in our New York store, and he would come in, he was a taxi driver, and he would come in every week and buy a payday and buy one piece. And he had an arranged marriage, and his wife was coming to join him, and he was building a dinner set for her. And he did it over time, and he just did one piece at a time, and he loved the colours, and he just thought she would love the colours, and so he built this sort of, you know, dinner set of love over time. And I think that, you know, it's expensive, but yeah, my friend Amanda says to me, how much is a kilo of tomatoes? You know, like, is it really expensive? If it's something that's good design and it stays and lasts and brings you pleasure, then, and it's made here, that's tricky.
And I don't get the sense that you've ever been tempted to manufacture offshore or take any of those shortcuts that could allow you to kind of compete in that space, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, there's always the conversation. The conversation will come around and I'll listen to it and I'll think, well, that means I'd need to go and live there because I love being involved in the process. You know, the office is not my favourite place. I do love all the team in the office, but I love to be on the floor. And if I had my way, I'd be glazing most days or working with product. I love that process. That's why I started doing this. So that's where I love to be. I also really like being in the retail stores. I think retail is such a creative pursuit, and we definitely have a lot of fun with the spaces and the window displays, and you know, we try and shake it up as much as we can. But yeah, I love being down here. I like being covered in clay. I get jealous of, you know, you met Deb before and she was covered in clay, and I get jealous of that space. Yeah.
Great lady. Yeah. Listen, I know that you've got a lot underway looking at carbon emissions and becoming a carbon neutral organisation. And I hadn't realised how much porcelain needs to travel, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so this porcelain really does travel. So the clay that we buy comes from France, and we put it on a boat, so that's much better than putting it on a plane. But
Why is all the porcelain in France?
well, it's not. It's just the manufacturing process for porcelain is
Right.
better in France. I mean, no, they make beautiful porcelains in Australia, but we do have to bring everything into
Don't want to
Australia
hear
to
from
make.
angry porcelain makers
No,
in
no, no. I
Australia.
don't want to upset them. There are beautiful porcelains here. They are a bit too expensive for a production of our size. We wouldn't want the mud prices to go up any more by buying those porcelains. And when you find something that really works, I have tested lots of different clays, and this clay body is the most forgiving. It stretches for us, which is a strange word when you think about porcelain, but you need it to stretch. And it loves our colours, and our colours are wedded to it. You know, we probably, I can't imagine changing. We do need a plan B, because sometimes you just need a plan B, but I don't know where it is. So fingers crossed we never have to change suppliers.
Okay, so tell me what you're doing in the carbon space.
Well, I've always known that we are a high energy user because I pay the power bills. We threw solar all over this roof. So we have, how many? 135 solar panels on this roof. Sorry about that. I'm not good at remembering those numbers. 135 solar panels there, but that only helped us with about a third of our power. And so we've always been looking to do more. And I think the bushfires this year really kind of escalated that panic in all of us. And so we made the decision and the commitment that we would be carbon neutral by the end of this year. COVID came. It's a really good excuse to not hold true to your promises, but we can't do that. And so we're in the process of doing a carbon audit now. And we're moving to a new space, just over there, the other side of the oval.
I know, I heard you were moving and I got a bit panicky thinking, are you leaving the neighbourhood? But it's just moving about a block that way.
A block that way. And that new space has got fantastic roof lines, so we'll do a lot more there. We're looking at some water capture because we use a bit of water with washing and doing things. We're looking at, what else are we doing? Batteries potentially. But just constantly, I think, I always feel overwhelmed by this stuff.
Right.
There's so much bad in the world, and if you can just incrementally, I'm starting to get over my fear of all of that bad and not being able to make any difference by just doing little things, you know.
After 25 years of, I mean, quite relentless growth really. I mean, you've never not been growing really as a company, have you? And I wonder, I mean, is that the sort of person that you thought you'd be 25 years ago, an entrepreneur growing this big company? And you know, I sort of intuit from your manner and what you say that you didn't really sort of start out with these giant plans of world domination. So how do you find peace in the middle of all that? I mean, do you have panic dreams about, you know, about ceramics or?
No. I don't panic about ceramics now. I think everything that could have gone wrong has already gone wrong. So
what's your worst ceramic going wrong story?
I think the time I set myself up at Maison Objet, the trade show in Paris, and it was the second time I'd done it, and I was on my own, and I had this massive wall, like the stand was about this deep because that's all I could afford.
Okay,
but
that's
6
I'm
meters
nervous already. Yeah.
6 meters of very high wall, like in one of our stores, with the same Vitsu shelving system. And, you know, the cheese platters were big pieces on the top. And they have this lovely announcement where they say, Mesdames and Messieurs, welcome to the Maison Objet. Please, the trade show is open at the beginning of the day. And that sort of happened. And then there was an electrician who was faffing around behind me with some electrical cable. And he kind of flipped it. And it just took the whole top of the stand, came crashing down around me. And I was sitting there, and the inhale of all the French stand holders all around me, and the doors were open. And I just had to deal with it. I just cried.
How much stuff smashed?
About a bit of stuff. a bunch of things were still intact on the floor. I could pick them up and put them back, and I dealt with it, and I got very upset, and I realised you can't get upset in Paris because nobody cares, they just shrug at you. So.
Oh my God, okay. Yeah, so
Yeah.
you've inoculated yourself against
I think everything,
ceramic
I
nightmares.
think, you know, I've had kilns that have just kept going up, and I've, you know, get to work and it's glowing in a way that it shouldn't be, and you open the door and it's all melted. Like things like that have happened to me. So there are no dreams, there are no nightmares that I have to, you know, no, that's gone now. I sleep really well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so now it's a sense about finding a social responsibility direction for the company to be present in the community and in the economy as
but
a
in all of the
benevolent.
communities.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's communities. We've got communities all around the world. We've got a London team. You know, gorgeous Emma is over there with Finn helping her, and the guys are Aaron and Jax, and in LA, and Sarah and Julia, and whoever else is there at the moment. I'm not quite sure, but in New York, and you know, and then our team here and our team in Melbourne, who are all in lockdown at the moment. Hi guys, and just looking after people. I really think that that's what's missing. We need to be nurturing and looking after more people. And you know, early this year, I watched my daughter go through her last part of fine arts school, and you know, she was working really hard, studying really hard, and it just looked really, and we were helping her as much as, you know, she would allow us to, and it looked like really hard work. And I just don't think that's, you know, I think then there was this change in, you know, how important arts courses and arts degrees are, and I got that just sort of, for me, I wanted to make a change with that. So we've started a new art prize, which is really exciting.
Okay.
So it's going to be for a third year or master's student doing ceramics. It doesn't have to be functional ceramics. And it will be a $10,000 prize that they can pay their rent with, or go on a trip somewhere when they're allowed to, pay for a new kiln or whatever it is that they want to do.
Do you feel that, I mean, your own sort of circuitous route into becoming a ceramic artist, how does it compare, do you think, with young people that you see today trying to make their way in this field? Is it easier now or harder? Do you have a sense of that?
I'm not really sure, but I know, I mean, from the guys that I have working for me that are ceramic artists as well, and we have quite a bunch of people who are, quite a lot of the team are ceramic artists. You know, they pay a lot of money for a very small space.
Right.
You know, the access to electricity and doing this, getting this set up is a really difficult thing. You know, I guess if there was more that I could do, and there probably is, and we probably will do more, but we've got to prioritise how we do that. You know, creating some beautiful art spaces that people could work out of would be one thing that I'd love to do. Subsidising the arts. How do we do it? How do we do more? I think we all should be thinking about it.
And you're also building communities in the APY lands to collaborate with.
Yeah, I think we want to make a difference in other areas, and that's like an area for me where I feel that we can do more. And so we've just started a project with the women from APY Lands to create a small exhibition that will go into our stores and go online of their work on mud pieces.
Oh, okay.
It's going to be really exciting. So it's
painted
the logistics.
in glaze or in paint?
Painted in underglaze, in an underglaze, so there's colour, but hopefully it remains matte. And we're looking at the pieces that work, and I was meant to go down there last week, and of course I can't fly down, so I did an online tutorial and was waiting for some questions on Tuesday, but I didn't get any. So I'm assuming everything was just fine. And this is the first process, so everybody's going to be sampling. We'll fire those pieces and see, because again, it's not an exact science. Right. I think I was showing you in the glaze room before, and we were looking at that purple coloured
Yeah.
pigment, which actually gives you a piece that I don't have here, but the ink blue
Right.
is actually a purple colour, and it's the same with underglazes. So you
Guys, the glaze room is amazing. I can't even explain how cool the glaze room is. And of course, it all kind of turns out different once you fire it.
So
which-
that's sort of there needs to be a level of experimentation with these underglazes for people to learn how to use it. So we're midway through that process, but that's going to be ready in time for NAIDOC Week.
That kind of artistic collaboration it's a real seeding of territory, right? Like, because your consistency of your design is so deep. It must feel like quite an extraordinary gift to kind of ask other artists to come in and place a design on the stuff that you make.
Yeah, we kind of avoid that. We
Yeah.
have done it in the past, but it needs to be a special project.
Yeah.
And this, I think, is a really deserving special project. And I think the idea is that 80% of that money goes back to the artists, and the other 20% goes towards building a fund for kilns and glazers, and to kind of give them independence from us.
Right,
Yeah,
so it's kind
over
of
time.
designed to be a kind of evolving independence project. So what you're trying to do is amplify, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's exciting, isn't it?
It is exciting. Yeah. Is it nice to have the opportunity now? I mean, do you feel like you've kind of got to the end of kind of business hard scrabble, like learning how to do it all, learning how to manage a bigger workforce and evolve into online sales and all of that, and to be in a position where you're stable enough to think about looking around and thinking, well, who can I now assist?
Yeah, but I think I think we all have a responsibility to do what we can and to make change, and that's what is necessary now. That's what we need now. Like, there's a whole lot that is really, the world is not as easy a place for a lot of people, and I think we need to be doing what we can to make it better.
Is there something that motivates you particularly? I mean, like, I know that you switch on the news right now and there's usually in any bulletin about 8 things that are awful.
Yeah.
Is there any image or any idea that has really grabbed your eye and really sort of lodged in your heart particularly?
There's so many images that are grabbed, like it's a daily thing. And that's, I think I said earlier, I try to avoid the news a little bit because otherwise I find it a little bit hard to function. But then other things, like I think through COVID, because there's so many people I love are being affected by what's going on, I sort of probably listen more than I should to what's going on with that. I mean, we're making it work for our team. We're looking after the people that are important to us. And, this sort of process is as much a part of that. For us, we really want to connect with all the people in Melbourne who are stuck at home and people in Sydney who don't want to go out and do, to do too much. And I know for myself, I've been sticking close to the neighbourhood. I'm really lucky I live 2 minutes that way and I come down to work and I sort of do that a lot. And I've got, a great team around me who support and nurture me. So it's sort of letting everybody have a little bit of that is a really nice thing to do.
The way that you live with your children and your partner and your dogs and, and your neighbourhood, how has it changed during COVID, and has it changed your creative process? I mean, I know that you've created an extremely good brownie dish.
Yes.
Mainly for your son, as I understand it.
Yeah, Spencer got this, it was the slice. So when the shutdown first happened and we decided that everybody was safer at home and we sent everybody home, there was a core team of us, about 10 people that just kept coming in. So the sort of senior managers kept coming in, and we workshopped and worked out how to make it all work. We realised that sales fell off the cliff, and but we needed to work out how to make it work.
Right. Was
And
that a rather character building?
Yeah, a little bit.
Point in time.
But then within a couple of weeks, we realised that life was going on and people really wanted product. And, you know, the team that I've got are extraordinary. And they worked, they sat down and they worked out how to keep everything moving. And online went up 400%.
400%.
And then we realised we needed more people in here to help it get out the door.
To pack things, right?
Yeah, to pack it, and we were all doing everything, you know.
Did you think that was a bit of a? Did you think you were seeing things when that started to
Well, we
click
didn't.
over?
I don't think anybody really thought that much. We just literally were coming in every day and just doing whatever needed to be done, and then gradually we could bring people back when we were sort of allowed to bring people back, and then eventually the stores reopened when we felt safe enough to. The stores in New South Wales are still open. New York's open, London's open, LA is open. Just down, the guys down in Fitzroy are stuck down there. Yeah, but yeah, I think that it's been a pretty wild and crazy ride. I'm certainly looking forward to getting back to a little bit more normality, but I don't think the world stops as a result of COVID. I think that, you know, the promises that we've made this year and the things that we want to achieve, we need to work out ways to get them done. And connecting with our community. I mean, this is our community. Everybody there is part of our community. You know, people who care enough to join this conversation all deserve a big hug from all of us, and vice versa. I mean, we're all missing this connection.
Yeah.
So how do we connect? So it's stretching us and it's making us do things differently. But it's all the brave new world. We'll all be doing all kinds of things like this in the future.
That's true. We do have questions flooding in from
Flooding.
our audience, and I will go to them in a second. But before we do, I wanted to kind of conclude by asking you to look back 25 years ago and reflect on this kind of quite extraordinary journey. I hesitate to use the term, but it really bloody is one, right? And I don't know, maybe offer some advice, if you have any, to anyone who's contemplating a similar kind of harebrained scheme. Because it's not been easy, right?
No, it's not been easy, and I think that, you know, the first 10 years you don't earn any money. So watch out for that. It's really about giving yourself. I was talking to somebody the other day, and it's about time and having enough time to learn your craft, having enough time to and space to create something, and believing in what you're doing and listening to people. I mean, the art of listening has been so important for me.
Right.
You know, from the first wholesale account that I spoke to who said, I'm just looking for something really simple. I can't get it in Australia. Is there anything simple? And that was David from Wilson and Blake. And he wanted something that was, and I just went, simple, okay. Like, these are the steps. And listening to people and taking risks and, yeah.
This actually dovetails very nicely, and I'm, you know, plunging slightly early into audience questions. But Ellie Bishop has asked, which I think is a great question, do you rely on people for advice, whether friends or professionals? Like, where do you absorb that advice? And I guess in your position, the bigger you get, the more fraught advice might be and the more high risk, right, it is to accept it. Do you have any guiding principles for how you run Mud or how you run your life that you live by? That's from Ellie.
Okay, listening to the ABC in the morning, somebody said, do the hardest thing in your day first.
Okay.
And that is one of my absolute guiding principles. If I've got something that is sort of burdening me or sitting on my shoulder and nagging at me, I definitely will get that out of the way because the rest of the day is a breeze once that horrible task is taken care of. And I just want, I'm tired of, I get tired of the amount of, that we have to battle to get through our world, you know, and I want to, like you say, Willy Wonka, that's kind of, I want that to be this workplace. You know, we had, before COVID, we were not allowed to do it now, we used to do yoga twice a week, and the team got a massage once a month, and we had these beautiful staff lunches, and hopefully when social distancing is relaxed a little more, we'll be able to get back to doing some of those activities. But I think that, you know, we're on this planet, for a short time, and it's got to be a pleasure, you know. You shouldn't sit in jobs that you hate, and you shouldn't be around people you don't like.
And you shouldn't make products
that
that
you
are
hate,
taking the piss or that people don't need, right?
And it's not really about, it's not just about money. It's about, you know, having a nice lifestyle, yes, but it's about making you know, nice things for nice people. That's the simplicity of what we do. Yeah.
We had a question through really early, which I really loved, which is from Sharon Wong, who asks, what is the most unusual way a piece of mud has come into being?
So the Pebble Bowl Large, which is probably our signature piece.
Yeah.
It's the piece we sell engagements, weddings, the fruit bowl, the thing you put a roast chicken in and put it in the oven. Like, it was a light base that I made, and when I took the mould off, it broke in half, and the bowl was left behind. And I looked at it and I thought, I'll just fire that. I'll just put it into the kiln. I didn't throw it into the recycling and not go along with that process. And that is sort of, that whole series of pebble bowls became our probably most popular and most successful piece because of an accident. And accidents happen here all the time.
Have you ever had a complete debacle where you've had a vision of something that really just has come out and you've just gone, that's ridiculous, that's not working?
That happens regularly. But I think that something's beeping.
That kiln is done.
My best story like that was one of the Christmas windows I did in the Wallara store.
Right.
I had this fantastic idea. I'm going to get a bicycle wheel, and I'm going to hang lots of pieces of fishing line off it, and from that I'll hang little tiny cups, and then I'll create a Christmas tree, like hundreds of pieces. But I didn't tie the initial piece of wire up. Somebody else did that, and I wasn't paying attention. I was busy tying the little tiny bowls up, and I was standing in amongst the tree, and it fell on my head. So that was not a great idea. But then tie your own string and it won't fall down.
Okay,
Yep.
Well, I think we can all take that on board. Kerry Hall has asked, what was the catalyst for change and also the time frame that took you from Bondi stall to the larger business? Like, at what point did you stop freezing your ass at the Bondi market and think, okay, I'm going to get myself some real estate?
Probably did the markets for about 2 years.
Right.
And then, I don't know, I think my memory's a little bit foggy around that. Like, at what point then did I start doing the trade shows?
Were you just not sleeping very much? 'Cause
Maybe I wasn't, and I had little children that are now all grown up and gorgeous.
I love that but you've got a classic 1,000-mile stare when answering that question. You're like, anything could have happened. I had 10 years like that where I had like a baby every election year.
Yeah.
And I can't actually remember any of that decade.
No. So I'm not 100% certain, but I think it was about 5 years into getting to. I remember doing my first Australian trade show, and after doing subsequent shows, I know that what happened at that first one was never to be repeated. But I set up the stand, and people came to the stand and started placing orders before the trade show opened, because a lot of people who came to those trade shows also had stores. So they were placing orders because you can't sell to every store in a street. Right. And this was something that was so new that people really wanted it.
Oh, that's cool.
And then they kind of like beelined towards, and that was but that was maybe 5 years after the markets. Yeah.
Meg from Elwood in Melbourne wanted to ask you, as do I, very deeply, about colours. Because, I mean, the essential palette hasn't changed massively. I noticed from this strategically placed bunch of poppies that you're not a million miles off the poppy, really, are you, palette-wise? Or even the nasturtium, I think, translates quite nicely. Do you feel like you had that palette in your brain all along, or?
I think that I think it evolves. I mean, we started. To be honest, when I started working with porcelain, I didn't even know I needed to buy pigment in. I used to just get my underglaze, which is something you put on the outside, and tip it into the clay. Like, I really had no idea what I was doing.
Are people who know about porcelain going,
yeah,
when you say that?
Yeah, because it's like the most expensive, stupid activity.
Is that why? Sorry.
Because underglazes are really expensive, I think.
Oh, okay.
And then you're pouring all of this stuff that doesn't need to go into the material into that thing, and then I mix it up, and then eventually I worked out I don't do that. I need to go to the pigment makers and buy the pigment, and then put the pigment in, and that's a lot cheaper. And
a secondary apology to the porcelain experts who are like, oh God, I can't believe that she did that.
But I don't think there were a lot of people doing this when I started doing it, so I don't know if the experts were out there. I mean, it has been done over time. There are very famous pieces of tinted porcelain that are in museums around the world, but not to the sort of perverse extent that I decided to take the business, which is 19 colours and 80 different shapes.
Okay, that doesn't match though, does it? 19 colours, 80 shapes.
What's the combination? What does that add up to?
I have no mathematical abilities, but it doesn't seem super intuitive to me.
No. So everybody can come into a mud store and get their own unique, bespoke dinner set that is truly theirs, because of that mad combination.
Yeah.
And so the people who are coming into the stores are being creative. Yeah. They're not just, or they're saying, I just want that on the table. But a lot of people have the ability to be creative in that space and choose their own.
One of the things that strikes me, and I do have a couple of other questions, but I'm just rudely interposing myself again because I'm greedy. One of the things that I like about mud is that it works bizarrely well with vintage china. Like, it doesn't seem to really stick out. It just plays nicely with others, which I guess is something that some manufacturers would avoid because it's, not necessarily a brilliant business case. You know, you can put one item of mud with all this other stuff and it looks gorgeous. Was that deliberate, or was that just sort of accidental?
I think it was a little bit accidental, but I think that we didn't try to convince somebody to throw their old china out. And I think definitely as a selling, in the process of our stores, we're not hardcore salespeople that push you into making a choice. But often people will bring a bowl into store and say, this is my dinner set, I'd like some pieces that go with that. And, mud has a very strong sense of serving, like it's in the serving pieces will go beautifully with a Wedgwood dinner set or another one. And stylists have done it so beautifully over the years where they've propped with mud and put, bone china in together, something very pretty and floral, or given it a really hard edge look with something else in a modern environment. It does fit into lots of different categories.
You must love seeing it crop up everywhere.
It's kind of cute. Yeah. I remember in the very early days driving down William Street, and they just put the flags up for Good Food Week, and they'd done a pear. That this year they had a pear sitting in a mud bowl. And I didn't know, I had no idea. And I was just like, oh my God, my bowls are up there. They're everywhere. Cool. Look, there's flags all down the street. It was pretty exciting. Yeah,
they are a bit everywhere, aren't they? I mean, they're a bit...
Subtly.
Yeah.
Yeah, a bit hard to find, but a bit everywhere.
No, I mean that they're noticeable, not that they're, Okay. Sorry, that came out wrong. So Peter Gibson has asked an excellent question, I think. He says, we sent a wonderful set to Japan as a wedding gift. It was received very well and the newlyweds loved it. Japan is ceramic central. Do you see an opportunity in the Japanese market?
Well, we were approached a number of years ago, before the GFC, by the distributors of Riedel. glassware, and I actually have done a couple of Japanese trade shows.
Oh, okay.
And Wolfgang and Erica's Australian, and we have supplied different stores in Japan in the past. There are a lot of rules around ceramics in Japan, and
No
we're
way,
not
really? I find that
You
extremely
know, there
hard
is
to believe.
a particular size for a man's rice bowl and a woman's rice bowl, and the packaging is very important. And there are a lot of rules. I don't know if it's a simple sell within that market. And there's so many extraordinary ceramicists in Japan doing extraordinary things.
Okay, but I mean,
there's a little bit of a market for us there, but
there's sort of amazing ceramicists everywhere. I mean, like, you don't seem to, or you don't exhibit the signs of suffering from sort of imposter syndrome, even though you've like really jumped into this market over your career and, you know, popped off to the trade shows and been confident. It seems like you've been confident in what you're making and what you're offering. Have you ever sort of thought, oh my God, I'm about to be found out? I mean, I feel like that every single day.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. If only they knew. Sitting in a meeting with the people from Martha Stewart, you know, Sid and Nancy, Nancy's sister Susan. I remember having this, Susan Spungen was Martha Stewart's right hand, and in the early days having a meeting with her and just kind of going, all I could think of was, that's Sid and Nancy's sister. I couldn't quite get my head around the, if only they knew
Right.
what I'm
Although
thinking.
most of our imposter syndrome issues don't necessarily involve the Sex Pistols. I mean,
No.
yeah, I mean, that's pretty niche.
Yeah. No, often I think they, you know, if only they knew I didn't know. But I know how to do this.
But you do know.
I do know, and I've worked out, you know, with a really great team of people, we've worked out how to do this really well.
Right.
And, you know, we can, you know, I went to, last May, went to Milan and did this beautiful exhibition at the Milan Fair, and there was a lot of fuss made of us, and it was really lovely to know that, you know, this thing that we'd created was in that environment, and people were adoring it there as well. So, I mean, I'm very proud of the whole company, and I'm really proud of the people that work for me, but I'm really proud of the product. I think that it is, you know, it is a beautiful product, and I enjoy using it as much as everybody else enjoys using it, and I don't tire of it. And yes, this is slightly staged, this little one, but every day we open a kiln, and every day it's a different combination of colours and shapes, and it's delightful.
Is it
really
like opening
is.
a Christmas present?
It is like opening a Christmas present, but Dan gets to do it. I don't get to do it anymore. I used to I've packed a lot of kilns in my time.
I bet you have.
Yeah.
How would you like to think that people use it? Because, I mean, in my house, and I know people sometimes say, well, it's porcelain, you've got to be incredibly careful, but I mean, I don't know if it's wrong, but in my house it just gets used every single day and into the dishwasher and put away by children, and like shocking things that probably shouldn't happen.
No,
But
it's
in
exactly
10
what it's
years,
designed
yeah.
for. Like I've always said I've never wanted to make something that is precious that people have to work harder to keep. I mean, the evolution of taking it from the table to the oven was just something that I did one day. I went, oh my God, that worked. I made little souffles. I
Get
thought,
out.
wouldn't that be cute? And it's so cute. And then, you know, the pebble bowl went in, put a chicken in it, stuck it in the oven. And then over time, we were doing it at our house all the time. So when we started talking about it more, we designed some pieces that were specific for that. So baker dishes and flans and pie dishes, to show people not to be afraid. And then we did the baked in mud online, which has really taken the fear factor away from it. Right. It's meant to go in the oven. It's meant to go in the dishwasher.
In a hotter oven than you could ever imagine.
1250 degrees.
Anyway, this is starting to sound like an infomercial. And it washes just like a breeze.
And dreams. Magic sponge. Yeah,
exactly. And now for a word from our sponsors. No, not at all. I'm actually going to close with a really, really good. Oh, Kath Rose says, who's your business manager? Is it your partner? I'm interested in that too, so I'm just going to.
Business partner. I have a silent business partner, Ben. Hi, Ben.
Silent Ben.
Silent Ben. He's not very silent. And my life partner, James, is and the father of my children, who's not here tonight, is my other partner, and I listen to him most of the time. I listen to him all the time. I don't always take his advice or either of their advice. But no, I don't have like a mentor in business, but I have a lot of really smart people around me who are very good at what they do.
Okay, and I'm going to close with a question from Jessie Coyle, which, you know, is I think the thing that I also want to know, which is, what is your favourite mud piece of all time?
It changes all the time. Like, I love these guys. The new wine cups are just, they fit in your hand, and it's things that fit in my hand I love. So the noodle cereal is probably one of my favourite pieces. And the pebbles have always been great.
Love a pebble.
Love a pebble.
Hey, Shelley, thank you for inviting me into your lair, and by extension, everybody who's joined us tonight. I really have enjoyed hearing about your process and the way that you have developed over that quarter of a century. I mean, it's an extraordinary period of time.
Yep.
And I think it takes a certain amount of personal strength and elegance of vision to grow a company the way you have, but also remain always open to inspiration, to collaboration, and to recognising junctures at which you can assist other people and remain open to ideas. So thank you very much for sharing that with us this evening.
Thank you so much for coming and asking the questions.
Not at all, and thank you also for making a bunch of stuff that I love in my house.
Yay.
Thank you, and good night, everybody. Thank you for your patience. If you had any issues at the beginning of the broadcast, the whole team here is very grateful to you for hanging around, and we really hope that you will be on board for future Mud events, the opportunity to just like get together and talk about things in a relaxed way and get a little glimpse into the life and vision of some of the creative people around us is something that I think, I don't know, I feel like it's not just me crying out for longer conversations that are a bit more deep than the sort of stuff that you get online every day when you're panically trying to get across everything. So thanks for joining us tonight, particularly those of you who are in Melbourne feeling increasingly hemmed in and cheesed off with lockdown. Let's all believe that there are better times to come. Thanks again for joining us tonight.